This story is titled, My Family Sided with My Stepbrother When He Got My Girlfriend Pregnant. But 2 years later, we discovered neither of us was the father, and now he is losing his mind. Hey guys, so I guess I need to lay this out somewhere because it's been eating at me for a long time. I'm Eric, 28 male, and about 2 years ago, my life did a complete 180. Looking back, I don't know how I missed the signs, but hindsight's 20/20, right? Let's rewind a bit. For a while, I thought my life was pretty smooth sailing. I had a stable job, a decent apartment, and even found someone I thought could be the one. But now, I wish I'd seen the red flags sooner. It's crazy how you can think you've got things figured out, only to realize you've been walking into a mess without even noticing. Here's some context. A couple of years ago, I met Haley, 26, at this diner downtown. She wasn't just your average server. Haley was quick with a smile, sharp with her jokes, and she had this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room. I'd go there after work to grab lunch, and we'd chat about everything from indie movies to music to how much we both hated the morning rush. One day, after a particularly long shift at work, I decided to ask her out. Nothing flashy, just a simple, "Hey, you want to grab dinner sometime?" To my surprise, she said yes. A few weeks later, we were inseparable. We'd spend our weekends watching old cult classics, going for walks by the river, and talking about how we both wanted to escape our small-town routines someday. Haley had dreams of opening her own little cafe, and I was just trying to climb the corporate ladder in finance. 6 months in, we decided to move in together. It felt natural, you know? She brought her books, her plants, and her knack for making my apartment actually feel like a home. I was happy, like genuinely happy. Haley was supportive, fun, and just had this way of making the hard days seem easier. Things were so good that I decided it was time for her to meet my family. That's where the cracks started to show. Let me give you a quick breakdown of my family dynamics because it's complicated. My dad, Patrick, remarried when I was 16. My mom had passed away when I was 14. And for a couple of years, it was just me and my dad trying to figure things out. Then came Barbara, my stepmom. She brought along Ryan, my stepbrother, who was a year younger than me. Now Ryan and I never clicked. He wasn't a bad guy on the surface. He was just one of those people who seemed to get away with everything. He'd bounce from job to job, dropping out of community college after one semester, claiming school wasn't for him. Barbara always defended him, saying he was just figuring himself out. Meanwhile, I was busting my butt to get through college, working part-time jobs, and making something of myself. It wasn't just Ryan, though. Barbara had a habit of playing favorites, and let's just say I wasn't her favorite. If Ryan managed to scrape by, it was a cause for celebration. If I got a promotion at work, barely a nod. My dad? He was a good guy. But honestly, he leaned on Barbara too much. He'd go along with whatever she said, probably to keep the peace. Anyway, I thought bringing Haley into the mix would be a chance to show my family how happy I was. And to my surprise, things started out well. Barbara was unusually nice, going on about how much she loved Haley's style, and even asking her for tips on cooking. My dad seemed happy for me, and Ryan, I don't know. That's where things got weird. Ryan was unusually chatty that night. He kept asking Haley about her work, her hobbies, her favorite movies. He laughed a little too hard at her jokes. Jokes that weren't even that funny, if I'm being honest. At one point, he even offered to show her his comic book collection in the basement, which was something I didn't even know he still had. At the time, I brushed it off as Ryan just being friendly. Haley didn't seem bothered, and I wasn't about to ruin the night by overthinking it. After all, it was just one dinner. But then, over the next few weeks, I started noticing little things. Ryan suddenly became a regular at the diner where Haley worked. He claimed it was because he liked their food. But let's be real. Ryan wasn't the type to go out of his way for anything unless there was something in it for him. I asked Haley about it, and she shrugged it off. "He's just being nice," she said. "Maybe he's lonely or something." That sounded plausible, I guess. Ryan wasn't exactly swimming in friends. Still, something about it rubbed me the wrong way. I casually mentioned that weird vibe they have to my dad one day during a phone call. I wasn't trying to stir the pot, just venting a little. His response was classic dad. "Oh, I'm sure it's nothing, Eric. Ryan's just trying to be helpful. You should be glad they're getting along." That didn't help at all. Things escalated when Ryan started offering Haley rides home. It started on days when I was stuck at work late, and she didn't want to take the bus. "It's just a ride," she'd say. "You don't need to worry." And because I trusted her and wanted to avoid being the jealous boyfriend, I let it go. Looking back, I feel like an idiot for ignoring the signs. But at the time, I didn't want to believe my stepbrother could be crossing any lines. I mean, Ryan and I weren't close, but we were family. Surely he wouldn't, right? Fast forward a few months and everything felt like it was falling into place. Haley and I were talking about the future, moving to a bigger apartment, maybe even taking a vacation together. Life was good. Then came the day I stumbled across a pregnancy test in the bathroom. It was tucked behind a stack of towels, almost like it wasn't meant to be found. For a moment, I tried to convince myself it wasn't Haley's. Maybe a friend left it there, or it was some kind of mistake. But the doubt didn't last long. I brought it up to her later that day, not really sure what to expect. When I asked about it, she paused, then admitted it was hers. She said she'd been scared to tell me because she wasn't sure how I'd react. Hearing that hit me in a strange way. On one hand, I couldn't believe she hadn't told me sooner. On the other, I felt this wave of excitement I didn't expect. My head was spinning, but in a good way. I started thinking about the future, not just with Haley, but as a dad. It wasn't something I had planned for right then, but the idea of having a family, of creating something bigger than us, felt right. I couldn't stop picturing it. A baby in the house, family holidays, teaching them how to ride a bike or showing them my favorite old movies. It was like this switch flipped in me, and suddenly I wanted it all. That night, I made a decision. If this was happening, I wasn't going to drag my feet. I wanted to show Haley that I was all in, not just for the baby, but for us. So I left work early the other day, feeling more determined than I'd ever been. I went straight to a jewelry store, spent way too much time picking out the perfect ring, and didn't even care about the cost. I knew what I wanted, to take the next step with Haley and make this official. For the first time in a long while, I felt like everything in my life was falling into place. On my way home, Ryan called me out of nowhere. No, hey, what's up? Just straight to the point. We need to talk. Can you come over? It's important. I wanted to say no. I mean, I had stuff to do, and honestly, Ryan isn't usually the dramatic type, so part of me thought it couldn't be that serious. Still, something about the way he said it made me pause. It wasn't like him to call me like this, and definitely not to sound so intense. I debated for a bit, pacing around like an idiot. I had plans for the night, plans I wasn't ready to ditch, but I couldn't shake this weird feeling in my gut. So I figured I'd just go, hear him out, and then head out. The second I walked into his place, I knew something was off. I don't know why, but the vibe just felt heavy, like whatever he had to say wasn't going to be good. Before I even had a chance to sit down or ask what was up, he dropped it on me. And let me tell you, it was like someone had yanked the rug right out from under me. Everything I thought I knew, gone in an instant. When I entered his apartment, I got so confused I saw Haley sitting on his couch sobbing. Her makeup messed up and she looked miserable. I had no idea what she's doing there. Then Ryan looked at me and said exactly, Haley and I have been seeing each other. For months, my mind didn't even register it at first. Like it couldn't compute the betrayal. I just stood there, frozen, staring at both of them. Haley was still crying, tears streaming down her face, but she couldn't even look at me. Ryan, the guy who couldn't keep a job for more than a few weeks, who had always been a leech on my family, had the nerve to stand there looking guilty, like he was the victim here. I wanted to laugh, scream, or maybe just throw something, but all I could manage was, "Are you serious right now? How long has this been going on?" Ryan stared at the floor, shifting like a guilty kid caught stealing candy. "A few months," he said, barely audible. "It just happened." Just happened? What does that even mean? People trip and drop their phones. They don't just happen to sleep with their stepbrother's girlfriend. Before I could process that nonsense, Haley spoke up, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Eric. I didn't mean for this to happen." Her words cut deeper than Ryan's. Yeah, she didn't mean for it to happen? Was that supposed to make it better? I felt my chest tighten, anger bubbling up. "Didn't mean for it to happen?" I repeated, my voice sharper now. "You didn't mean to cheat on me with my stepbrother? That just happened?" She didn't answer. Instead, she covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. Meanwhile, Ryan, of all people, decided he had something to say. He stepped forward, trying to calm me down. "Look, Eric, I get that you're mad. You have every right to be. But..." He hesitated, glancing at Haley, then back at me. "You need to know something else." I glared at him, already bracing for the worst. "What now, Ryan? What have you done too?" He hesitated again, rubbing the back of his neck like he was stalling. Then he dropped the second bomb. "The baby. It might be mine." I swear it felt like the floor just disappeared beneath me. My head started spinning. The baby. The one I'd been so excited about. The one I thought was the start of a family with Haley. It might not even be mine. I'd been picturing this future with her, planning to propose that night, and now I was standing in Ryan's crappy apartment, hearing this nightmare unfold. I turned to Haley, desperately hoping she'd deny it. "Is this true?" I asked, my voice quieter now, almost begging for her to say it wasn't. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I don't know, she said, her words barely audible through her sobs. I was going to tell you, but I was scared. Scared. Of course she was scared. So scared that she let me believe everything was fine while sneaking around with Ryan. So scared that she let me think I was going to be a father, when she didn't even know for sure whose baby it was. My fists clenched at my sides as I tried to stop the wave of emotions threatening to pull me under. Anger, betrayal, sadness, everything all at once. You know what? I said finally. You two deserve each other. I'm done. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. My mind was racing, but as the anger simmered down, I knew I needed to tell my parents. At the very least, they needed to know the truth about Ryan and what he had done. So I went straight to their house, hoping for some kind of support or, honestly, just someone to listen. When I told them everything, Haley's betrayal, Ryan's involvement, and the baby situation, I expected anger or maybe even disappointment in Ryan. But instead, Barbara was quick to jump to his defense. Eric, these things happen. People make mistakes, she said, her tone so dismissive it made my blood boil. Maybe you weren't giving Haley what she needed. You can't blame Ryan for that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you seriously blaming me for this? Ryan went behind my back with my girlfriend, and you're making excuses for him? Barbara shook her head like I was overreacting. They're happy now, Eric. Don't you think it's better this way? It's not like you and Haley were married. My dad, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke up. I thought maybe he'd be the voice of reason, but no. He just nodded and said, "It's probably for the best, son. You don't want to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't love you. Let them figure it out." The betrayal cut deeper than I thought it could. My own family, the people who were supposed to have my back, had chosen my stepbrother, again. They didn't care about what he had done, how he had disrespected me, or how much this entire situation had wrecked me. To them, keeping the peace was more important than standing up for what was right. I left their house without another word. By the time I got home, the anger started turning into clarity. There was nothing left for me here. That night, I packed a bag and left. I didn't care where. I just needed to get as far away from this disaster as possible. By morning, I had my plan. Leave, rebuild, and never look back. Whatever future I thought I had with Haley was gone. I crashed on my buddy Jake's couch for a week while I figured things out. Jake's the kind of guy who doesn't ask too many questions, which was exactly what I needed. I applied for a transfer at work the next day. Luckily, my company had offices in a few different cities, and after a lot of back and forth with HR, they approved a move to their branch 2 hours away. It wasn't super far, but it was far enough that I didn't have to worry about running into anyone I knew. The first few months were rough. I moved into a tiny studio apartment that felt more like a shoebox than a home. I kept to myself, spending most of my time at work or zoning out in front of the TV. I was still untangling everything in my head. How Haley had betrayed me, how Ryan had crossed a line, and how my own family had taken his side without a second thought. I'll admit, I spent a lot of nights replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. Was it my fault for not seeing the signs sooner? Should I have been more confrontational when Ryan started acting shady? The self-blame was brutal, but eventually I realized that I couldn't change what happened. All I could do was move forward. That's when I decided to focus on myself. 2 years passed like this. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. I wasn't completely healed. There were still days when the memories would creep back in, but I was in a much better place. Then, out of nowhere, Haley showed up at my door. It was a Friday evening, and I'd just gotten home from work. I was looking forward to a quiet night of takeout and Netflix when there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I assumed it was a neighbor, or maybe someone delivering a package. When I opened the door and saw Haley standing there, holding a baby, I almost slammed it shut out of reflex. She looked different, tired, worn down, like life had taken a few swings at her. The baby, who couldn't have been more than a year old, was sleeping in her arms, bundled up in a faded blue blanket. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I didn't know what to say. The last time I'd seen Haley, she was crying on Ryan's couch, confessing that the baby she was carrying wasn't mine. Finally, she broke the silence. "Can we talk?" Every instinct in my body screamed at me to say no, to slam the door and tell her to get lost. But then I looked at the baby, small, innocent, completely unaware of the mess surrounding them, and something in me softened. "Fine," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." "So," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "What do you want?" Haley hesitated, her eyes darting between me and the baby. I need your help, Eric," she said finally. I raised an eyebrow. "Help with what exactly?" She took a deep breath. "It's about the baby," she said. I think she's yours." I froze. Of all the things she could have said, that was the last thing I expected. I was completely thrown. I mean, how do you even process something like that? For 2 years, I'd been living my life, thinking I was done with her and the chaos she brought into my world. And now she was back, holding a baby and telling me I might be the father. I didn't say anything. I just sat there staring at her. I could tell she was nervous, but I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. Finally, I found my voice. "You said the baby was Ryan's. You were pretty damn sure about that, Haley. So why are you here now, telling me she's mine?" Haley looked down, avoiding my eyes. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. "I was scared, Eric. Everything was happening so fast, and Ryan convinced me. He convinced me that it had to be his. But now I'm not so sure." "Not so sure?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "You realize how insane that sounds, right?" She nodded. "I know. I messed up. I should have done a paternity test back then, but I was too caught up in everything. I thought Ryan would step up and take care of us, but he didn't." I leaned back in my chair, letting her words sink in. On one hand, I couldn't fight the urge of kicking her out and tell her to deal with her own mess. But there was a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispering, "What if she's telling the truth?" After a long pause, I said, "So what do you want from me, Haley? Why are you here now?" "I want to do a paternity test," she said. "If she's not yours, I'll leave you alone. But if she is, you deserve to know." I couldn't argue with that. If there was even a slight chance that the baby was mine, I needed to know. Not for Haley's sake, but for the baby's. "Fine," I said finally. "We'll do the test. But until then, I don't want any drama. Got it?" The relief washed over her face. "Thank you, Eric. I mean it." The next day, I made some calls and set up an appointment for a paternity. The lab said it would take about a week to get the results. In the meantime, I started digging into Haley's story. Something about it still didn't add up, and I wasn't about to take her word for anything. I reached out to my college buddy, Greg, who now worked as a private investigator. Greg was one of those guys who could find out anything about anyone, and I figured if anyone could help me get to the bottom of this, it was him. When I explained the situation, Greg didn't even blink. "Send me everything you've got. Timelines, names, anything you think might be relevant," he said. "I'll look into it and see what I can find." Over the next few days, I tried to go about my life as usual, but it wasn't easy. Every time I looked at the clock, I found myself wondering what Greg might be uncovering, or what the paternity test results would say. Haley stayed in a motel while we waited, which was honestly a relief. I didn't need her hovering around, adding to my stress. A few days later, Greg called with an update. "Eric," he said, his tone serious, "you're not going to believe this." He went on to tell me that during the time Haley and I were together, she'd been seeing someone else, a guy named Josh, who worked as a line cook at the same diner. Greg had found old social media posts and messages between them that dated back to when Haley and I were still a couple. "Wait," I said, cutting him off. "You're telling me she was seeing this guy and Ryan at the same time?" "Looks like it," Greg replied. "And here's the thing. Based on the timeline, it's possible Josh is the baby's father, not you or Ryan." My head was spinning. Haley had managed to drag 3 different guys into this mess, and now she was knocking on my door, expecting me to clean it up? Greg didn't stop there. He'd also dug into Haley's past and found a pattern. Before she moved to our town, she'd lived in another city where she'd pulled a similar stunt, juggling multiple relationships and leaving a trail of burned bridges behind her. "Eric, this woman's a pro," Greg said. "She knows how to play people, and she's been doing it for years." When I hung up the phone, I lost my shit. I was so angry, not just at Haley, but at myself for ever getting involved with her in the first place. A few days later, the paternity test results came in. As I opened the envelope, my heart was pounding. I didn't know what I was hoping for, to be the father or not. Either way, my life was about to change. The results were clear. I wasn't the father. For a moment, I just stared at the paper, feeling a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I wasn't tied to Haley for the rest of my life, and anger that she'd dragged me into this mess to begin with. With all the dirt Greg dug up, I knew it wasn't enough to just block Haley and move on. She needed to be confronted with the truth, not just for my peace of mind, but to make sure she knew her lies had caught up with her. I wasn't about to let her walk away thinking she could manipulate people like this without consequences. So I called her one last time and told her we should meet. She hesitated, probably sensing something was up. "Okay, when?" "Tomorrow. Meet me at that diner you used to work at." The irony of meeting her at the place where it all started wasn't lost on me. The next morning, I got there early and grabbed a booth in the back corner, away from the crowd. I had a folder with me, every piece of evidence Greg had found, plus the paternity test results. I wasn't planning to go easy on her. Haley walked in a few minutes late, carrying the baby in her arms. She looked anxious but tried to mask it with a weak smile. "What's this about, Eric?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I didn't waste any time. "I got the paternity test results," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. Her smile faded. She didn't open the envelope, just stared at it like it might bite her. And the baby isn't mine," I said bluntly. "Not mine. Not Ryan's either, from what Greg found out." Her eyes darted to mine, wide with panic. What do you mean Greg found out? Who's Greg?" "The one who discovered your dirty laundry. He is private investigator," I said, leaning back in my seat. "He uncovered a lot about you, Haley, like the fact that you were seeing Josh, the line cook, while we were together, and how you've pulled this same stunt before in another city, dating multiple guys at the same time, playing them against each other. Sound familiar?" Haley's face turned pale. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she tried to laugh it off. "Eric, come on. You really hired a PI? That's ridiculous." "Ridiculous? You know what's ridiculous? Showing up at my door after 2 years and trying to pin a kid on me that you knew wasn't mine?" She got defensive. "I didn't know for sure, okay? I thought maybe—" "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't sit there and pretend this was some innocent mistake. You've been lying to everyone from the start. Josh is the father, isn't he?" Haley looked away. I don't know," she mumbled. "Cut the crap, Haley," I snapped, pulling out the folder. I opened it and laid out the evidence. Screenshots of her messages with Josh, photos of them together, and even a timeline of events Greg had pieced together. "It's all right here. You were seeing him before, during, and after you were with me. He's the father." I thought she might cry, but instead, she just sighed and said, "Fine. You're right. Josh is probably the father. Are you happy now?" "Happy," I repeated. "You've got some nerve, Haley. You lied to me, to Ryan, to Josh, hell, probably to half the people in this town. And you think I should be happy about what, exactly?" She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, adjusting the baby on her lap. "Look, I didn't plan for things to get this messy, okay? I made mistakes, but I didn't know what else to do." "Oh, you didn't know what else to do," I said, leaning forward. "How about not lying to everyone around you? How about taking responsibility for your actions, instead of dragging people into your mess?" Haley didn't respond. She just sat there, staring down at the table. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "I've already sent all this evidence to my family. They know the truth now, and they're done with you. As for Josh, he deserves to know he has a kid. I'll make sure he gets this information." That seemed to snap her out of it. "Wait," she said quickly. "You can't tell Josh. He doesn't need to know. He's not ready to be a father." "Not my problem," I said coldly. "He has a right to know, and you've already stolen 2 years from him. I'm not helping you keep this lie going." Haley looked like she was about to protest, but then she stopped herself. Maybe she realized she didn't have a leg to stand on anymore. "What do you want from me, Eric?" she asked quietly. "Nothing," I said. "I don't want anything from you, Haley. I just want you to leave me alone. Don't call me. Don't show up at my door. Don't try to drag me back into your life. We're done. Now you can leave," I told her. It sounded like a demand. As she got up to leave, she looked at me one last time. "I really am sorry, Eric," she said. "For everything." I didn't respond. I just watched her walk away, the baby resting on her shoulder. When she was gone, I let out a long sigh and leaned back in the... It was over. Finally. Truly over. I'd confronted Haley, laid out the truth, and cut her out of my life for good. That night, I went home and thought about everything that had happened over the past couple of years. It wasn't just about Haley and the lies. This was also about my family. The way my dad and Barbara had treated me still stung. They didn't just fail to support me. They actively took Ryan's side and pushed me away. Even now, knowing the truth about Haley, I hadn't heard much more than a half-hearted apology from my dad. I wasn't ready to let them back in. Honestly, I didn't know if I ever would be. In the days following my confrontation with Haley, I made sure the evidence Greg had gathered got into the right hands. I contacted Josh, the baby's biological father. I wasn't trying to stir up drama, but he had a right to know the truth. When I called him, he sounded shocked. "Wait, what? Haley has a kid? And you're saying she's mine?" "Yep," I said, almost laughing, but kept it short. "I've got the DNA test results, and there's no doubt. She's been lying to everyone, including you." Josh took a long pause before saying, "Thanks for telling me. I had no idea. I'll figure this out." I didn't know what he planned to do, but that wasn't my business anymore. I'd done my part. With Haley and her mess finally out of my life, I focused on getting back to normal, or at least figuring out what normal meant for me. One of the first things I did was reconnect with my friends. Over the past couple of years, I'd pulled away from a lot of people, mostly because I didn't want to explain the disaster my life had turned into. But now I realized how much I missed having those connections. Jake, the friend who let me crash on his couch when everything first went down, was the first person I called. We grabbed burgers at our favorite spot, and it felt like old times. We laughed, talked about work, and even planned a weekend trip to the mountains. It reminded me that not everything in my life had to be heavy and complicated. I also decided to double down on my career, and I started running on weekends. I joined a local running group, which not only helped me stay in shape, but also introduced me to new people. One of the group members, Sarah, stood out almost immediately. She was smart, funny, and had this no-nonsense attitude that I really appreciated. We started chatting during runs, and before I knew it, we were grabbing coffee after practice. It wasn't anything serious at first, just two people getting to know each other, but it felt good to have that spark again. As things with Sarah slowly progressed, I couldn't help but reflect on my relationship with Haley. At first, I was worried I'd carry that baggage into anything new. But Sarah wasn't Haley. She was honest and straightforward, and she didn't play games. It was refreshing. About 6 months after cutting ties with Haley, I got a surprise call from my dad. "Hey, Eric," he said, sounding hesitant. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." "I'm fine." There was a long pause before he said, "I know things haven't been great between us, and I wanted to apologize. I didn't handle things the way I should have back then." It wasn't exactly the heartfelt apology I'd hoped for, but it was something. I told him I appreciated the call, but didn't say much else. I wasn't ready to forgive him yet. Barbara and Ryan didn't reach out at all, which was fine by me. From what I'd heard through the grapevine, Ryan was still bouncing between jobs, and Barbara was still coddling him. Some things never change. As for Haley, she stayed true to her word and didn't contact me again. Occasionally, I'd hear bits and pieces about her through mutual acquaintances. Apparently, Josh had stepped up and was trying to be a part of his child's life, but their relationship was rocky at best. It wasn't my problem anymore, though. With each passing day, I felt more and more like myself. The anger and bitterness I'd carried for so long started to fade, replaced by a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. I was learning to trust myself again, to make decisions without second-guessing everything. By the time Sarah and I started officially dating, I realized I'd finally moved on. Haley's lies, my family's betrayal, Ryan's nonsense. It was all in the past. It didn't define me anymore. It's funny how life works out sometimes. What felt like the end of the world turned out to be the start of something better. Sarah wasn't just a fresh start. She was proof that I could let someone in again. She showed me what a real partner looks like. Someone who builds you up instead of tearing you down. And yeah, I guess that's it. To everyone who stuck around to read my story and shared your thoughts, thank you. Your support means more than you know. It's a reminder that even when people let you down, there's still good out there. Take care of yourselves, and don't settle for less than you deserve.